Welcome back to another MECH 1000 video, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use the stretch command. So in a previous video I talked about the trim and extend commands and how I really like them and they're really useful, but students tend to shy away from them. And that is even more the case with the stretch command. The stretch command can be really useful, but for some reason I've just recognized that students have a hard time using it for some reason. So hopefully this video will help you understand how to use it and therefore will make you more inclined to use it. So I'll draw a line here and I'll copy it multiple times. So I've got a series of lines. So you can stretch, and I've shown you how to stretch lines before by using their grips. So let's say I have these 6 lines, and I want to stretch them out over here to this grid line here. So I could click on each line, grab its endpoint, stretch it over, click the next line, grab its end grip, stretch it over, highlight the next line, click on its end grip, stretch it over. So I could continue to do this for all of them. But that's inefficient. I'm having to do that 6 separate times. It would be much better if I could do it all at once. And you can using the stretch command. So the stretch command works essentially by, let me escape out of it and show you here. Let me just highlight all these lines. So you can see all the grips that appear. We've got their endpoint grips on either side and their midpoint grips. So essentially what we're going to do when we select the stretch command is we're going to create a selection window that includes all of these endpoint grips. And then we'll be able to move all of them at once. So I'm going to choose the stretch command. I'm going to use a selection window that includes all of those endpoints. Then finish the selection with a right-click, Enter or Space bar. And now it's kind of like the move or copy command. You select a base point, which could be on the lines themselves, or it could be any arbitrary point. And then you move it in the direction you want to stretch it. So I stretched all of those lines out simultaneously using the stretch command. The stretch command can be used to stretch things in as well. I can shorten all of those lines. And I can stretch them in different directions. I can stretch it not just horizontally, but I can stretch them diagonally. Okay, so basically it's just grabbing all 6, in this case, all 6 of those grips and moving them all in the same direction, the same length, at the same time. So some mistakes I sometimes see students making when they use the stretch command is they go with a left to right to selection window, and then that just doesn't work. They go to stretch, they select, and nothing's happening. So you do have to use a right to left selection window to grab those end grips. So it's really important to understand the difference between a left to right versus right to left selection window. The other thing is if you include the entire line, both endpoint grips in your selection window, all you're really doing is moving those objects. So if an object is selected and it's entirely within your selection window, when you go to stretch it, you're really not stretching it, you're just moving it. So you have to leave some part of the original objects anchored in place in their original position, and then you can stretch them out. So like I'm thinking of maybe like rubber bands or something. The rubber band has to be connected at its one end in order to stretch it out. If it's not, if you just grab the entire rubber band, then you're just moving the rubber bands. You're not stretching them. In order to stretch it, some part of it needs to stay put. So the stretch command can be really useful if you've drawn something and it's not the right size. So maybe I'm going to try to simulate some type of drawing that we might have done. Some real simple thing here, like maybe a base plate with 4 bolt holes in it. And you realize that, you made it the wrong width, let's say. If I put a dimension on here, that's 7.5 inches. And then you realize, oh no, that should have only been 7 inches instead of 7.5. So you can use the stretch command, use a right to left selection window. So what do I want to stretch over here? If I want to make this 7 rather than 7.5 inches wide, I want to move this entire edge line over, this vertical line that represents the right side. I want to move both of these holes over, and I want to stretch the top and bottom lines here. So in my selection window, I want to include the entire right side, both of the circles, and part of, like, the right half of the top and bottom lines, or at least their endpoints here at the corners. So I make my selection, I finish the selection with a right click, enter or spacebar. I choose a base point, and then I can stretch it over 0.5 inches, and now it's 7 instead of 7.5. So in class, when we're working on drawings, if a student calls me over to their desk and says, oh, hey, I've messed up my drawing, I've made something that's not the right size, do I have to completely start over? In most cases, no, you don't have to start over, and my secret weapon for fixing those mistakes is the stretch command. So to recap here, stretch command is really useful, especially for fixing mistakes when you've drawn something the wrong size. Make sure that when you use it, you think about where those blue grips are that you're wanting to move. So don't select the entire object, just the part that you actually want to stretch out. Make sure you're using a right to left selection window, not the other way around. It should be green. And then you choose a base point and move it out to whatever size you need. Okay, so get to know the stretch command. It can really help you out when you're in a jam. It's excellent at fixing mistakes, and it could be a really valuable tool in your toolbox. Again, if you've got any questions, be sure to let your instructor know.